What's up, everybody? It's the Roundtable Sports Podcast. My name is Taylor McLean, and I just got done watching the Buffalo Bills defeat of the Miami Dolphins. So I thought we'd get into it today and talk about that game. It was a fun game, and it was one that I've been looking forward to because both these teams had really shown me something through the first couple of weeks. So I thought we'd get into it. Before we go into that, wanted to shout out to the new sponsor, Iron Horse Power Services. Their social media is listed in the description of this podcast. If you'd like to support the podcast, please go and use the link and follow them on social media. There'll be a link upcoming personalized to the Roundtable Sports Podcast. But until then, go and follow them. They're a Texas power company that will be sponsoring the podcast going forward. Extremely low rates. They tell me there's a 3 in 4 chance they can save you money. And if you do call them or go to them, do mention the Roundtable Sports Podcast at this time. We'll have a link coming up for that here pretty shortly. But we're excited to have them. Episode 296, I believe. If you get on here and it says 297, just know that I'm an idiot when it comes to producing these things. Hopefully you enjoy the content as far as me talking about what happened in your team's game. And as I said, I had very high expectations for this game, and it was quite exciting. It featured offense and defense that I liked seeing and that I enjoy. And this certainly was an easy watch for me because I had questions. I had it on one of my 4 screens because right now I have a pretty sweet setup where it's red zone on a 55, and then it's a 4 box on a 55, and then on like a 32, all bang, bang, bang right next to each other. I'll do like a dedicated game or another 4 box. And this game was perfect because it was right up in the very top, right next to on the big TV. So I had lots of time to look at this one, and I had a lot going on player parlay wise and bet wise for this game. So I wanted to see what happened. And Buffalo, or I guess Miami, is fans are disappointed for sure, but I don't think that they have much to apologize about necessarily with this game either. It'll be an interesting to see what it looks like when this team meets again. And then I enjoy this rivalry as well because there's always a chance for a third game with the quality of both of these teams. Because I believe both of these teams to be of I don't know if the Dolphins are championship quality quite yet, but the Buffalo Bills most definitely are. They're definitely in my inner circle of trust right now, and hopefully that doesn't jinx them to be in my inner circle. But definitely they've shown me something through this first bit, and I thought we should jump into it. And if that preamble is anything, this is going to go longer than the 30 minutes I was kind of thinking I could talk about 2 teams. So here we go. Talk about the winner first, mostly. It's a 2 to tango situation, so there's plenty of Dolphins, going to be interlaced, right? But these teams are just interlaced. It's how it goes with them both being in this conference, with them both having quarterbacks that are ascending to levels that they hadn't. I guess Josh has been there, but to levels that they hadn't been to previously, or maybe Josh just didn't top out to the level that he played in today in last season. And I chalk that up to being a year smarter and having just more experience. Every little bit of experience helps in the quarterback game. Every time you see something, it adds on to your Rolodex of information inside your head that helps you deal with it the next time. But outside of that, he had that hit he took in the Jets game last year. There were power outages in his arm intermittently. Like he would go to really hit that down the field throw, and sometimes there would be an outage and it would be short. And that accuracy that he showed today wasn't there for them to rely on as much in the last season after he got hit. It just wasn't right. It didn't get right, and he just had power outages throughout. And when you're playing for the Super Bowl, those outages can cost you in a big way. And a lot had to be done to knock them out last year and the year before that too. So Buffalo has just had some hard luck going into the last couple of seasons, because they're definitely were contenders for the Super Bowl in those seasons, and they will be again this season. Now, for both of these teams, it's going to be what do they look like, when they meet again, but who's hurt and who's not. And to that point, Josh gets hit in the arm again, and we're talking about a different style Buffalo Bills team. But given the way that Josh looks right now, if he can maintain that, Buffalo's in for big time prosperity going forward, and could be. I don't know. I was thinking about it. I was like, man, is it going to be the Bills and then whoever wins between the Philadelphia Eagles and 49ers? Which, to say I am a Cowboys fan, I've already written that off. So, yeah. And I'm not writing off the Chiefs or the other contenders in the AFC either. I'm just saying I really like the way the Bills have looked recently. And I thought that first game was just kind of a weird, division rivalry game where your division rival knows you so well. And that was the case today, too. We'll get into what that looked like with the Dolphins offense, because that was the one thing. I guess the Dolphins on their side sputtered and the Bills didn't. And part of that was just Josh Allen not having those outages and not showing those times where he was inaccurate last season. He's not doing that as much this time. I mean, he had the same amount of touchdowns as incompletions. Throw it passing wise. If you conclude the rushing touchdown, he had more touchdowns that he accounted for or was in the play on than incompletions. That's the level of accuracy. He had shown us snippets of it before, and then he was showing us it, and then he had the outage that I'm telling you, he would just not be able to complete that pass, or it would just, he would be going to finish off that throw or whatever it was, and it would twinge on him, and he couldn't put that same velocity on it, and it would underthrow it. There's a bunch of underthrows last time, and it's part of being, a quarterback that runs around and creates time. But if anybody is in a position to be able to handle those hits and now is being in less of a position to take those hits, it's Josh Allen. And that was a big thing that I thought, and I think that the Bills have been showing us that they haven't had in years previous as well. Josh is MVP front runner right now for sure, but he still doesn't have to it's not on his shoulders as much as it used to be from an offensive standpoint, but or really just even from an overall team standpoint, because the defense is good and the defense is really putting things together, and I want to talk more about that. But also Josh is being supported with a running game as well. I don't think this unit is an elite run blocking unit by any means. It never has been, but they've gotten, they're more continuous with it. It feels like, and it feels like they have a better plan, and they have more explosive players behind the running game and in the running back position as well. So it wasn't just a run over, bowl over performance today. But now more than ever, it feels like the Bills can kind of balance themselves out a little bit more. And when teams make them run the ball by playing back, they can do that better than they could before. And part of it is you've got a little bit more explosion out of the backfield with James Cook. So that helps. He is capable of running between the tackles, but he's better on the edges and out in passing routes. And then you've also got Latavius Murray and Damian Harris to handle the more grinder between the tackle type carries. And Latavius is even a little bit more versatile. It's surprising how long he has stuck around with how violent he runs and how physical he can be. And with all three of them running right, they're not having to wear any of them out, which isn't good for fantasy purposes, but is good for the Bills' long-term prospects to have three guys that can all do it and do different things for you too, while not holding you back in any one area is something they just haven't had. Like I like Devin Singletary and Zach Moss. Devin more as a number 2 guy for the Texans. That works. And Zach Moss has done great for the Colts, but Zach Moss is, I've decided, is my line of demarcation for whether you like an NFL, a legit NFL running back. It's like Zach Moss is the Mendoza line, and then Latavius is right there, and he just has a little bit more experience, so he's better at picking holes and just being a banger between the tackles. And then Damian, adds the physical element. He can be between the tackles. And then James Cook, who still is going down in snaps, and I don't get it exactly, but I think they're just trying to maybe save him, or maybe they just like what they're getting from Latavius. But I think he adds an explosive element. Like the pass he catches over the top was big. That he was able to go with a Josh Allen rollout and be able to be explosive with the ball in his hands afterwards, I think is big for the offense. And I don't know what it is about them not giving him more snaps necessarily, but I do think that it might be that they're saving him a bit and don't want to grind him out in his rookie year either. So having all three of them to go with a healthy Josh Allen, who is just, able to mitigate it out to all these different weapons. I mean, today it was mainly Diggs, but I mean, Gabe Davis may not be a dominant number two, but he gets open and has his moments. And then I like Hardy. I really liked that third down play he made, to when it really felt like he was about to get tackled and he jump cut back and then went forward to get that first down. That was big, and I like that. And then Shakir is just fine as a fourth or third, or however you want to do it. And then you've got the lightning and thunder options at tight end as well. There's so many mouths that honestly, it hurts the fantasy value of it, but for the Bills, it's just it's really something to see them have put that together, and they've done a really good job of putting together a lot of these peripheral options, because you're paying Diggs and Josh as much as you have to be able to replace those peripheral options on an ongoing basis, and they've done a good job of doing so. And while it hasn't led to a Dalton Kincaid or Dawson Knox breakout or anything, it does leave them with options and a lot of people that the defense has to cover. And Josh is just kind of point guarding it around at an elite level because he has an elite arm. He's the arm that you have to compare everybody else's arm to. Him, Josh Allen, and Patrick Mahomes. I got to work on my camera left and right, but those are my big three. That's the god tier, and I don't mean to be sacrilegious or anything, but that's the best tier of arms in my opinion. Then below that, there's everybody else. Trevor, A-Rod, when he's healthy, obviously. We'll see if he comes back, what he looks like. Lamar, who's the other one that's on there? I digress. The main thing to take out of that is that Sam Howell, whatever. He's probably a little below that, but regardless, Josh is the arm that you compare it to, and I just love the way he's moving around. He's not having to run as much either. Like a lot part of what my point was with having those three backs and having the running game be more efficient for the Bills is just not having to rely on Josh trucking people and quarterback sweep side to side, a la Anthony Richardson, who's doing a good rookie year Josh Allen impression right now. It was cool to see Josh, he was looking downfield more than ever because he's just so confident in his passing and what he's doing right now in the offense, in the guys that he's throwing it to, just all of the above. You can just feel the confidence oozing off of this offense, and they seem to be putting themselves in good position, and they're not having to. It seems more sustainable, and that's something we're going to talk about with the Dolphins. The Bills, as they currently stand, that's part of the reason that I am bullish on them, despite losing Tre'Davious White, which we'll talk about too, as the alpha contender right now, is that what they're doing seems sustainable. And if they're able to run the ball on people, in addition to what they're capable of doing, it keeps defenses guessing. And the more that a defense doesn't know if you're going to run or pass, the more effective both things are, and the more effective an offense is overall. And they're just overall more threatening with everything right now because they have it all going and because of their quarterback. It's all on Josh, and I wouldn't want to put it on anybody else. Feels like there's no higher character, bro, like just solid guy, and I'm proud of him because I started watching film seriously in his rookie year, and I could see it then. And it's exciting to see Anthony try and do the same things, even though I think Josh was probably a little bit further along as a passer even then. It was still Clifford the Big Red Dog. You know, y'all, if you're a Buffalo Bills fan, you remember him trucking people and quarterback sweep left, quarterback sweep right. And Josh, just man, those were he was glorious during that time, but that's not sustainable over time. The way the Bills offense doesn't have to relies on him, but doesn't like it relies on the playmakers like Diggs. Diggs was huge today. God, they just, I mean, this, the 7 targets doesn't feel, it doesn't reflect the domination. If he hadn't have scored touchdowns and it was just like one touchdown for 120 and 7, this day, the fantasy score would not be representative of just how dominant he was. It felt like any time that they needed it, he was open and he was able to make a big play. Whether it was first downs on slants or just, it just felt like he was all over the field. And then they were having to devote coverage to that and having to play back on the Bills to keep them in front of them, and that led to everything else being open underneath. And it's you just gotta be able to make the defense choose, and then whatever they choose is wrong. And the Buffalo Bills are in a better spot to do that than they've ever been before. Now, I don't know. I really do like the Miami Dolphins defense. So I respect the heck out of the fact that they were able to run the ball a bit and were able to then, they were able to do what they were able to do in this day. I mean, I'm not gushing over 100 yards here, but at the same time, I don't know. It just feels more balanced than it ever has before. And that goes to the defense too. So on the defensive side, it has been impressive to see what they've put together so far. And that was the big difference in this game. Miami came out pretty hot, right? And they scored on their first 2 possessions and got another touchdown and made things look interesting up front. But when I point to the difference in this game, when I think about why why it happened the way it happened, it was a big part of it was the offense, was Josh, being able to continually get points, even, when it was field goals, it was, tamping on to what they'd already done. And a big part of that was the defense put them in those positions too. So you got to give it up for them. And it was really the way that they did it that was impressive. The coverage outside of the first plays, but also just the way that they made Tua and the offense on the Miami Dolphins side more uncomfortable than it had been really all season. It looked like the defensive line, especially up the middle, was impressive. Ed Oliver and Daquan Jones. Daquan? Were really giving the Dolphins problems up the middle. And part of that was they didn't have Connor Williams, and that pushed one guard into, I believe Eichenberg's been playing guard. And that pushed everybody around a little bit on the Dolphins line. Plus the line lost Teron Armstead during the game. Now the left tackle wasn't as big a problem that they brought in. He wasn't perfect, but he played good for a swing tackle. It was really, it was really up the middle with the Ed Oliver and the Daquan Jones piece. Owning Eichenberg, owning Robert Hunt wasn't as bad with Isaiah Wynn, but still none of it was good. And they did a great job of both covering and, up the middle too, because that's hard with the linebackers. So, they did have the linebackers in coverage and were able to do that, but they were getting a lot from the pass rush. AJ Espinoza has been good as well. So they've gotten a lot out of their front. Rousseau is good. So they've got, solid 4, and then they're going to add Von Miller to that. Also, don't overlook the addition of Leonard Floyd too. So they've got a pretty good amount of guys. Leonard Floyd was out there a lot today, or making plays at least. and it looks good. And then you're going to add Von Miller to that. That's pretty good pass rush, and it disrupted both the running game. They seem to have a good feel for disrupting the Dolphins' running game, which people hadn't been doing as much of. And then they were after a certain point, because there weren't any incompletions in the first quarter, which was the first time that had happened in the league this year. But once they kind of got too off their mark, and once they kind of got ahead of the Dolphins a bit and were able to tee things up on them, and the running game really got out of sorts outside of some A-chain stuff, um, it was impressive. And you know, I think the Dolphins are going to be fine, and I think the Bills are going to be really good. And if they are, it's gonna be this step up that that they seem to have taken from these younger guys, from the younger pass rushers, because that's what they're going to need to have it be. Is that front is going to really have to be elite, and they haven't been in every game. They were really good today, but they haven't been in every game, so they're going to need that, especially with Tre'Davious White going out, which is tragic. He had come back from the injury before, and they've already confirmed he's out for the year. So that's something that the Bills are going to have to deal with. I feel for you. It just happened to me with the Cowboys, and the Cowboys were definitely going to be built on their ability to man up with Diggs, with Bland, and with Gilmore. And I think that was going to be a big thing for the Bills, to be able to man up Tre'Davious on, whatever big receiver that the other team had, and kind of go to work from there. And they're not going to have that ability, and neither is the Cowboys, although Bland played better. But still, it was impressive. It's a tough blow, but the defense has really been impressive. And this game was without Poyer too. So one of your plus safeties, you're without them, and you still put on a performance like this where you're able to stifle the Dolphins enough. There was just enough pressure. They couldn't establish any sort of rhythm. Once the air was out of the rhythm tire, then Buffalo really took over from there. Anyway, so quality win for Buffalo. We'll look to see what they do in the coming weeks for sure. And they're going to see this team again. And the Dolphins are going to get back up from this for sure. The only end of the world scenario for the Dolphins is Tua going out. And Tua seems to be healthy when it comes to the type of movements he's making. He's playing it smart with his running. He is running a little bit, but he's not putting himself in jeopardy during those runs. He's quick to get down. He when he's healthy and he's nimble, he is pretty good at navigating, but there was too much to navigate in this game at certain points that for him to get away. And the Bills were doing good with their coverage. And when I was talking about the sustainability of things, that's what I wondered with the Dolphins was, were they going to be able to keep up with the Bills? I expected the Dolphins defense to play a little bit better against the Bills, and maybe they will when Jalen Ramsey is on the team and they have somebody to go against Diggs. Because I do expect Ramsey to put all of the Dolphins cornerbacks into their respective roles, much like getting a number one wide receiver makes the previous number one, if he's a number two now, a lot of times that straightens him out because he's in the correct role. And that can have a trickle down effect for everybody, going down to having the third guy be the third guy, fourth guy be the fourth guy, etc. That can mean a lot for an offense, and it can mean a lot for a secondary as well. So that'll be interesting, because the Dolphins are missing two of their best defensive players, because Jalen Phillips is also not still playing. And then you lose Teron Armstead too. And that's what I was talking about in the Bills section of this, was that, it's going to be a war of attrition from here on who's the healthiest amongst these contenders, and amongst this inner circle of contenders, who's going to be there with most of their guys, or with the right guys. And we just saw with the Bills, they lost one of theirs. Dolphins are going to get one back, we're assuming, with Ramsey. Can't remember how to say his name, but the cornerback, Kukuo, Kuku, I don't know. He got burnt a couple of times He's had good stretches during this season, though. It's just dealing with Stephon Diggs can give anybody fits. If that's Jalen Ramsey, you can bump him down, you bump Xavier Howard down a little bit and put them in their right spots. We could be talking about a whole different coverage unit here. Plus Jalen Phillips bringing on more pressure. I like the front of the Miami Dolphins, so I thought this game would be a lot closer than what it ended up being, but there was just too much for them to deal with when they couldn't deal with Diggs in the first place, and then they had to play off of that, and everything just kind of crumbled from there. Um, on the Tua side, though, I mean, he is still showing advanced quarterback play here. It's more advanced than last year. I'm less worried about him. He does seem to be moving, not just with the runs. I brought up the runs to say that he is moving more fluidly. It feels less herky jerky, and I worry about him less and less every time I see him play because it feels like it does feel like he is more protected than ever from by himself. But also, he's getting the ball out on time. He's um, creating more time with the legs for sure. But it's also that he just feels more like this is more what we were going to see from him. That he was going to be a smooth operator, an accuracy king within 20 yards, and then he's going to have a decent deep ball and a decent or to good, excuse me, to nearly not quite very good, but nearly good deep game as well. But they were able to get him off his mark, and without the support of the running game, it was just too much on his shoulders, and he didn't have the ability to super create like Josh Allen does. Like Josh, he can create the extra 3 seconds. Whereas Tua, if somebody gets to him at all, they can run him down, they can tackle him. There's the increased chance of injury with him getting hit. So it's just not the same thing in the time creation and then in the second play part of it. And the Bills were able to expose that a little bit more than other defenses had to this point. And then they're able to put more and more pressure on them with the points, and it just wasn't enough in the end. And that is a problem for the Dolphins. If they don't blow out a team and they don't if it's like the Warriors, with that initial surge, if the team can take that initial surge, then they're more and more likely to win the game. And that's pretty straightforward. But at the same time, I mean, there's the Buffalo scored right along with the Dolphins and then kept scoring, and the Dolphins just didn't have the same amount of gas in their tank. That'll depend on the health of their line too, because that was the big difference today. Was the Dolphins offensive line couldn't handle the front, and specifically the defensive tackles, the defensive ends too, but the defensive tackles were a menace up the middle. So Josh or Mike McDaniel, his scheme does a lot to mask that, but it was never more evident than today that that's somewhere they got to continue to put resources towards and continue to get better. And it's just a bad matchup with the Bills bringing as much as they are able to bring in their front. And let's hope for the Bills' sake on their end that that's a situation that continues to get better and that they have a bunch of guys that have taken a step forward in their young pass rushers, because Ed Oliver, AJ Espinosa, those were first round picks that had a pretty decent amount of hype behind them, especially Ed Oliver, who some people thought might be the first pick when he was coming out. But, getting up to speed a little bit at defensive tackle to be a game wrecker coming out of Houston versus, Alabama or something, that's a little different experience too. So we'll see on that end, and we'll see with the Dolphins as well, because I mean, this is just a bad matchup for them on both ends, and should have reinforcements hopefully coming for that, because if they don't, then we could see this similar result with this game again, because like I said, it seemed sustainable. Like what, the Dolphins didn't and the Bills did. And I don't know. I don't know what it's gonna look like. And I do think that the Dolphins shouldn't necessarily, be it's a bummer for sure, right? And I have a feeling I'm gonna probably experience something similar when the Cowboys face the 49ers, it's like, oh, we're not the best. We're not the best in the AFC. We thought we might be able to be, and it's not the case right now. But how many, injuries are you away? What if Buffalo is missing Diggs on this day? Can you maybe keep up with them? Maybe. Diggs was the big difference on offense in this day. Like they had to really work to cover him and give him extra. And, you know, is Von Miller going to be there? It could even have been worse if Von had been there. Is Leonard Floyd doesn't always last the season. So, you can't, it's a game of attrition at this point. You just have to win the games, get yourself to the dance, put yourself in the best possible position. Cause I think, if, you're not first in line for the presidency or anything, but you're a part of the Senate, you're like third or fourth in line. And that could be something to look forward to if you can continue to add on to this. Cause I still love schematically the way that Mike McDaniels does things. And despite, some hiccups today, I didn't feel like it was anything where, it couldn't be rebounded from or, learned from. Cause it's, Mike is always going to have to evolve. He's going to have to come up with new stuff, and he's going to have to continue to get better. And Tua, he's going to get a good size contract here pretty shortly. They're going to have to pay him too. So how does this team progress from here? I know it's tough in week 4 to feel your mortality, but there are so many weeks between now and when that time is that you'd have to knock the Buffalo Bills out. And there's some teams that could do it for you too. So don't give up hope, because I think that this team is a contender, and there's more on the way for the Dolphins than for some teams with Ramsey too, because Ramsey could have made a big difference in this game. Having, Connor Williams, I'm not the biggest Connor Williams fan, but the way that their center got eaten up, having him just bumping everybody down, putting themselves in their appropriate roles would have made a big difference today. And when the Dolphins, it's not as dynamic with Tua that it is with Josh Allen, and that's not a slight against Tua. It's just with the timing thing, with the size, with the speed and the arm strength, it's just not quite as dynamic. So it needs to be more regimented, and it needs to be more in the flow of the offense for Tua than it does for Josh. And it makes the Dolphins a little bit more vulnerable because they can't win every style. And that was why I was so excited about Buffalo, is because now they can kind of win every style. They're still not a dynamic running team, but with Josh, they can be if they need to be. Dolphins kind of need to be this one thing. They need to be able to run the ball. They need to have Tua in rhythm, and they need to have something threatening the other team besides Tyreek. And, that isn't always the case. And it's going to lead to games like this. Now, this game can honestly go the other way too. If maybe not on this day, but we've seen it before. The Dolphins have the ability to beat the Bills for sure, but the Bills look really strong right now and seem to be like I said, with the KC kind of being middling at wide receiver, etc. I really like the Bills' chances, but I also think the Dolphins are going to make the playoffs, and that I like their chances to sustain something. Maybe not, scoring 20 points on 3 possessions, but definitely something for sure. Well, I went longer than I wanted to, but I love both these teams, and I wanted to give them their due. And the Dolphins fans and Bills fans alike should be excited about their teams and their quarterbacks and their prospects for the future, because I feel like they're in good hands with their organization now too. And McDermott's been there for a while, but McDaniel hasn't. And both franchises were kind of in the wind, like a lost at sea. Let's mix a whole bunch of metaphors at one time before this. So now that they both kind of seem to have a direction, should be exciting to see what they can do, not just this season, but in the years to come too. Well, that's what I've got for this game, episode 296. We're approaching 300. Like, subscribe for the YouTube if you're watching the video. Download the podcast if you're on another platform. Comments are also very encouraged. And then go and follow my sponsor for now. Iron or just follow. We're going to have more from the sponsor, Iron Horse Power Services, upcoming. It's a brand new thing for both of us. So exciting times though. So I won't be just doing this for your admiration or just for the love of the game. It'll actually be for money too. So maybe I can spend more time doing this, because I'd love to do this for every game. So please support and let me know that you're here and listening. And otherwise, have a great rest of your day.